What if leadership wasn't just about toughness and strength, but also about softness and care and embracing our humanity and heritage? My own journey as a leader began in a multinational company where leadership had a very specific mold. I worked hard to fit that mold and over the years made my way to a senior executive role. There was one instance that I think describes just what that mold was like. It was when we were preparing to present to our CEO who was flying in from headquarters, and I had a strategic agenda item I wanted to defend. I was preparing for weeks. On the morning of my presentation, I started bleeding heavily without warning. I panicked and I thought, there's no way I'm going to miss this presentation. I worked too hard. So I took a deep breath, calmed myself down, didn't say a word to my family, and drove to work. As I arrived, I pulled my assistant aside and I said, in case I faint from losing too much blood, here's my husband's number. I want you to call him. I gave my presentation, which went well. As soon as my segment was done, I drove straight to the hospital. And only then did I call my husband. As it turned out, I needed major surgery. I know. What was I thinking, right? At that moment, I thought I was being a great leader. I was doing all I was trained to do: be strong, power through, check emotions at the door, all in service of the company. Well, a few weeks later, that company let me go. And that made me wonder, is this really what leadership should be like? It's been over a decade since then, and since that time, I've had the chance to lead and build a coaching business where we've worked with hundreds of Filipino leaders. I now manage a mental health company where we support the well-being of thousands of Filipinos. I even went back to school and earned a master's degree in applied neuroscience. From all these experiences, I've learned so much about leadership and had a chance to shift my perspective. Today, I'll share three stories that help to shape that perspective. They're from my own journey and also from the insights I've gained from leaders I've had the privilege of working with. Along the way, I'll share what some of my neuroscience studies have taught me and what Filipino wisdom I've gained from. Here's the first story. 6 years after I left corporate and started my business, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I remember my first thought then was, how am I going to tell the kids? As a mom, my instinct was to protect them, shield them, and be strong. But I knew I couldn't possibly be strong all the time and that I would need their help to heal. So I asked for help in very specific ways. I told my kids I didn't want to watch my hair fall off from the chemo, so I asked them to help me shave it off. That got them excited. So we made a day of it. We took a video. They took turns with the razor, laughing as they watched me go bald. Now, when they look back at that time, they can say, you remember when mom had cancer and we got to shave her head? Wasn't that fun? I asked for help from my friends. I jokingly told them, I wish there was such a thing as a chemo shower. You know how parents-to-be get a baby shower, brides-to-be get a bridal shower. So that's what they did. They planned a party, brought bandanas for my bald head, we played games, laughed. Now, when they look back at that time, they can say, you remember when Jackie had cancer and we threw her a chemo shower? Wasn't that fun? In those moments, I realized vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability gave me strength. When I asked for help, it gave others permission to support me in ways they may not have known how to. Science tells us that social connection, especially with trusted people, creates our brain's response to managing our fear. In one study, they found that just holding a spouse's hand in a scary situation calmed the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Vulnerability lightens our load and creates deeper bonds. In Filipino, leadership translates to pamumuno, from the root word puno, or tree. For me, human-centered leadership is like a tree, rooted in values, scarred yet standing, flexible enough to bend, and strong enough to nurture those around it. By the way, just so you know, I've been cancer-free for 7 years now and counting. The second story happens 5 years after the cancer. This time I had another diagnosis: depression. I had everything to be grateful for: wonderful life, supportive family, meaningful work. And yet I found myself feeling despair and anguish for no apparent reason. Every attempt I made to get myself out of that state made me spiral even more. I was helpless and I felt inadequate. I knew I needed help. So I saw a doctor, went to therapy, and I talked to my family and my team. Because I love my work, I thought it would be best to just keep working and be as busy as possible. But my team wouldn't have it. They stepped in and did an intervention. They sat me down and they said, "Jackie, you are taking a break so you can heal. We've got you covered." They made it so easy to step back without worry and guilt. They were so gracious. Such is the power of collective leadership. That moment taught me that leadership isn't just about me, it's about we. Science calls this interbrain neural synchronization. When people share experiences, their brain waves and even heartbeats begin to align. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, increases. We literally connect at the level of brain and body. In Filipino, we call this kapwa, a shared identity, a recognition. It's we are. Leadership in this view is never solitary. It is always relational. This third story might feel more familiar. The pandemic was a time when the world felt so isolated and disconnected, and we were all dealing with a sense of grief and loss. During that time, my team was my solace, and I wanted to understand what was driving that. So I asked them, "What brought you here? What does this company mean to you?" And the resounding response was family and home. That's when we decided to call our team balay, the Filipino word for home. I know others have said that you shouldn't call a company family, but in our case, it was a clear advantage. You see, in our balay, we can be direct, candid, hold each other accountable, and at the same time, care deeply for each other, share values, want the best for one another. There is research to support this view too. Gilliac and Carranzas found that when people feel safe and supported, their brains shift into a healthier, more resilient state. Leaders who create this sense of balay, of home, create an environment where others can thrive. Now, so far, I've shared with you my personal journey and how human-centered leadership has supported me and my team. And some of you might be thinking, yeah, well, that's all good, but you're coaches, and we live in the real world. Will this really work in companies that need to drive performance? And the answer is yes. I've seen it happen again and again. Let me share an example of when we worked with one of the biggest corporate brands in the country. We worked closely with all their leaders to create a human-centered approach. Team members started reporting their leaders to be much more compassionate, caring about their well-being, more inclusive and empowering. Internal Net Promoter Score improved by 24%. And the business grew by 14% from an already big base. Human-centered leadership works for people and for business. So what does it mean to lead well? It means strength is not powering through, it's asking for help. It means resilience is not individual, it's communal. It means family and home are not cliches. They are spaces of belonging and care. To lead well is to care well, with the science of our brain in one hand and the heritage of our culture in the other. So, my challenge to leaders is this: you already speak the language of business so fluently. What will you do to speak the language of people and of humanity even more? Thank you.